And good morning, everyone, and happy St. Patrick's Day. My name is Brian Ritter. I'm the President and CEO of the Bismarck-Mandan Development Association and your host today on the Dakota Housing Network here on Super Talk 1270. I am joined in studio, as always, by producer Jim, who will be running the board. You can't see, but he just waved to everybody in Radio Land.
Hello.
And there it is. Now you hear him. And we're also joined today by my guest, my coworker, our Director of Business Development at the Bismarck-Mandan Development Association, Mr. Nathan Schneider. Nathan, welcome.
Good to be here.
Long-time listener, first-time caller, Nathan Schneider is joining us here today. And we are going to be talking about, again, Nathan works with me at the BMDA, and we're going to be talking about today all things Bismarck-Mandan, all things related to the economy, and really an outlook for 2016. But we're going to start off today's show, as we do every month, with a little bit of around town, a little bit of around the economy, utilizing the BMDA's Economy at a Glance. And the first thing we always look at is unemployment rate, because Nathan, I think you would agree, one of the questions we get most often asked by whether it's residents or new businesses is, am I going to find people? I mean, am I going to find people? If I'm going to come to Bismarck-Mandan and I'm going to open a store, I'm going to open a restaurant, whatever it is, am I going to be able to find people? And that question, Nathan, would you say probably gotten easier to answer over the last 6 to 9 months versus where it was maybe a year or 2 years ago?
Well, I think any time that the oil prices go back down, and oil prices start with a 3 now or 4, whatever they're starting with now, I think that opened up a few more people from the western side of the state, and I think in the businesses that we've talked to, at least we've seen some of those people moving their way over this way. So yeah, I think it's gotten easier to answer. Well,
certainly, and Nathan raises an excellent point in that anytime that you have a commodity-driven economy like we have in the state of North Dakota, whether it's ag products, whether it's oil and gas, we have ups and downs, we have peaks and valleys, swings, whatever you want to call them, and certainly you do see more labor open up when you have kind of value according right now on both sides. But in what's very encouraging news for Bismarck-Mandan is that the unemployment rate, the most recent we have, is right around 2.7, 2.8%. And I think to most people that sounds low, and you know what, it is low. But what's more impressive to me, and I think Nathan would agree, is that in addition to the low unemployment rate, we still have, an estimated 2,200 to 2,300 open jobs in Bismarck and Mandan right now, which makes it still a very attractive labor market. It is still very much a job seekers market. But as Nathan alluded to earlier, there definitely are more job seekers. There are definitely more people coming into the community looking for employment, and so that might make things a little bit easier if you're a business owner. Now, one thing that low unemployment does mean is that there are people working. There are a lot of people working. The best estimate we have right now, as of December 2015, we've got about 76,000 people in the labor force or working in the labor force, and those people are spending money. They are still spending money, and one of the best indications we have, and a number we often get asked about at the BMDA, is sales tax collections. And sales tax collections, as Nathan handles most of our, if not all of our business attraction, especially when retailers and restaurateurs call, Nathan, one of the first questions I ask is, what are we generating in terms of sales of sales tax collections? Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking at their competitors. The retailers, in meetings that we've had, they talk to each other. Obviously, they're getting the numbers from each other. And when a Panera Bread or a Gordman's opens up and they're opening up at a really a large sale percentage, they're telling their competitors, they're talking to each other, and they're hearing that. Absolutely,
and Nathan's right, and it calls to mind an example that we've seen in the last few years. If you go back 3-4 years now, we had an interested restaurant owner. They called the office and were asking about what's it like to do business in Bismarck-Mandan. We want to be here. Well, we can only tell them so much. Of course, they want to verify everything that we tell them. And they came up and they sent a secret shopper, like a lot of chains do. And they sent a secret shopper up here, unbeknownst to us, and they went to what they considered to be their competition, their potential competition. And as Nathan just alluded to, or Nathan just said, they talk to each other. They ask them, how are you doing? They ask them what it's like to find labor. And guess what? Whether it was 3 years ago or now, people are spending more money. When you look at sales tax collections, in Bismarck particularly, January of 15, we did about $1.56 million. January of 16, that number had jumped up to $1.611 million. So again, January, probably one of those more slow months because it's cold out. It's still winter. People just want to stay inside. But that all aside, you're looking at, again, more money being spent. If you look at Mandan, same story. January of 15 generated about $182,000 in sales tax collections. January of 16, $322,000. Now, the qualifier we have to make here in Mandan is that from January to 15, January to 16, the biggest change there was the Mandan City sales tax rate changed from 1 to 1.75, effective because of the Mandan Sports Complex. So that number is a little bit skewed, but again, certainly there is more money, it feels like, overall being spent in Bismarck and Mandan. Real estate. Nathan, what's one of the most common questions we get asked right now when we're talking about the economy and the outlook for 2016?
Available land.
That's right. It's available land, and it's where am I going to put my business and how fast, if I want to put my house in the market because I want to buy a bigger one or I want to build a bigger one, am I going to be able to sell my home? Well, here's some numbers for you. The number of single-family units sold through the Bismarck-Mandan multiple listing service, through the Board of Realtors, January of 15, or 64, January 16, 65. So essentially that number has stayed very stable. The biggest change that we can see is the average sale price. So if we took the average sale price for just those homes, certainly there are other homes that are being sold, whether it's just by the owner or they haven't chosen to list it through the MLS. There are other ones, so this may not be an all-inclusive number. But if we go back to January 2015, those 64 homes that were reporting being sold, the average sale price was $286,000. January 16, that number is now $243,000. Now, I don't want listeners who are out there to hear that number and go, oh, Lord, the sky is falling. I'm going to turn the radio off, go home, I'm going to board up the windows, and we're just going to call it good. Don't worry. I mean, that's not the case. This number, I think, is more indicative, at least to me, and Nathan may have a different thought here, but that number to me is much more indicative of a stable housing market and a stabilizing housing market as opposed to one that's really on a pace for unsustainable growth. Nathan, would you agree with that?
Well, I think when you look back at 2014, 2015 numbers, I think realtors and home builders would probably tell you that was probably some unsustainable growth. You know, obviously when you're a seller, it's probably not a good number when you see a $40,000 drop in average home sale prices, but I think, you're seeing homes, stay on the market about the same amount of time or a little less. You're seeing home sale prices come down. And so, yeah, it's easier to attract workforce to the community when there is affordable housing around.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk more about that after the break here, but producer Jim has got a selection of Irish music. I'm going to let him intro this one as we go to the break. Is this Dexy's Midnight Runners?
Yeah.
Come on, Eileen. Be back after the break on Super Talk 1270.
Right now, 25.
Here's Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons on Super Talk 1270.
And we're back here on the Dakota Housing Network with a song from my junior high dances, I think.
All right.
I think Jim has got us some cranberries with a little linger. And in case you haven't noticed, today is St. Patrick's Day, folks. And the musical theme here on Super Talk 1270 is Irish. Irish artists, songs about Ireland, songs about St. Patrick's Day. We've got a few more breaks, so stay tuned for those. But right now, again, a song from what I'm reasonably sure was a 7th grade dance at Walker Middle School. The Cranberries with Linger. Love it. And we're not going to linger on that anymore. A little play on words, Nathan. Joined here in studio today by my guest, the BMDA's Director of Business Development, Mr. Nathan Schneider. And Nathan and I, before the break, we're going through a collection of economic indicators. And there were just a couple more I wanted to get in here before we turn it over to Nathan and talk about some entrepreneurial activity here in Bismarck-Mandan. One comment and one question we get a lot, and I think the studio here is in Southeast Mandan, and we've seen a lot of apartment activity, obviously. And I think Nathan would agree and Jim would agree that apartments are becoming more plentiful here in Bismarck-Mandan.
Yeah.
And there certainly is a question amongst the community, I think, and I think Nathan would agree that are we overbuilding? Are we building too many apartments? And before the end of last year, we really didn't have a lot of quantifiable information about or how to answer that question. But recently, the Bismarck-Mandan Apartment Association and North Dakota Guarantee and Title Company have partnered to essentially do a vacancy survey. And if we look at Bismarck, those apartment buildings in Bismarck built before 2010, the vacancy rate there is 4.5% according to those respondents. So a pretty good number. Those newer units in Bismarck built after 2010, that number jumps to 9.3%. Mandan, again, built before 2010, 2.5%. Mandan built after 2010, 5.8%. So certainly we have some vacancies out there. It's probably not the same market it was before, where the saying was you can't sleep on it or you're not going to sleep in it. Now it's changed a little bit. But another indicator of how our economy is doing is the passenger boardings at the Bismarck Airport. I think Nathan has probably traveled more than I have in the last probably 12 to 18 months. And Nathan, just anecdotally, would you say that you've seen an increase in activity when you go to the airport, when you're boarding flights and you're coming back? You're seeing more people out there when you're traveling?
Well, I mean, the addition of some other providers, we added American Airlines last year, flight to Chicago and a flight to Dallas-Fort Worth. So I think, there's more options out there. Obviously, you have, the 4 flights a day to Minneapolis. You have a couple flights a day to Denver. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when there's more options out there and there's more destinations to go to make your connections, you're going to see the boarding numbers go up. I think the 2015 was a record year for the Bismarck Airport, and so hopefully they continue to build on those numbers and keep going.
Nathan's absolutely right. The Bismarck Airport, in fact, last year in the entire state of North Dakota, only 2 airports saw an increase in their passenger boardings, and Bismarck was one of those airports. And I agree 100% with Nathan's assessment in that it's really a combination of increased demand and the ability for our flyers to find more carriers, to price shop, and to use more destinations. And that's been something that we've heard about for as long as I've been working with the BMDA. It's always been about how do we get out, what are our destinations, and what are our carriers. So by all accounts, folks, things going very well here in Bismarck-Mandan. But I want to change topics here a little bit somewhat now and talk about some of the activities that we here at the BMDA are involved in. And one of them is entrepreneurial development. And really, if you study the economic development textbooks like Nathan and I and others have, you can grow jobs really 3 different ways. You can try to attract new business, you can try to retain and expand the ones you have, or you can try to grow your own through, again, startups or entrepreneurial activity. And in the last few years, we've really seen it shift in our organization in terms of how we try to encourage entrepreneurship in Bismarck-Mandan. And Nathan, you're really the organization's point person in that community, in those activities. Would you take a little bit of time and explain to listeners really what our organization's approach to entrepreneurship is and how do we try to encourage that?
Brian's right. I think when you look at business development, business growth in a community, we like to say it's a 3-legged stool. When you look at it, it's business attraction, attracting new business from outside the community, business retention, expansion, expanding our own within the community, and then startups, the entrepreneurial development part of it. With our role in the entrepreneurial side of it, we're really more of a what we like to call a feeder. There are leaders and feeders, and what we like to call as a leader, we're a support group for that community. I think, like Brian said, there's really been a real surge in that startup community, that ecosystem they like to call it. There's the Start Bismarck group that's a group of volunteers that gets together, plans events. They're the group behind kind of the 1 Million Cups and the startup weekends, TEDx, all those things that are happening in Bismarck, the events that are happening in Bismarck. So I think it's a real testament to their efforts. It's a group of local entrepreneurs, local government employees, through the Small Business Administration, through the Department of Commerce, with us there at the table as well. And so, I think that we're really starting to see a surge in some of the events and things that are going on with that group.
Now, Nathan, you mentioned the events that are happening within the Bismarck-Mandan startup community. And one of those events, I think, that really people have a tough time grasping when you tell it to them is the concept of a startup weekend. Now, startup weekends are nothing new. They're new for Bismarck-Mandan, but they're really a concept that's taken off around the country. You saw them pop up in Boulder, in Austin, in the Research Triangle, in the Silicon Valley. But why don't you tell our listeners really what a startup weekend is, the concept and what's behind it?
Sure. Bismarck hosted our first startup weekend last January. The concept behind it is really to come up with an idea for a business and start that business throughout a 52-hour weekend. It starts usually Friday night with what they call open mic night. So each participant is allowed a chance to go up and pitch an idea for a business. The businesses are taped to a wall, and there's a number of businesses all over the wall, business ideas all over the wall, and then the group as a whole votes on each business, and usually it's broken down into about 8 businesses. There's groups formed around each businesses, just depending upon what your interest is. They're looking for designers, they're looking for marketing people, they're looking for management people and things like that. And then you spend the next 2 days coming up with an idea concept and starting that business. And it ends on Sunday night with a pitch night where you pitch your business idea to a panel of judges. Usually a winner's picked, and the winner, there's usually a prize package. There was, at least at ours, last year in January. The whole idea behind it is not that 8 businesses actually come out of a startup weekend. The whole idea is just to get people thinking creatively, and realizing that a business can be started with just a little bit of hard work and a group effort, and thinking that way is really the whole idea behind the weekend.
Now, Nathan, the local startup community here in Bismarck-Mandan is planning a bit of a variation on that startup weekend, and at least according to what we know, probably the first type of variation or of this kind really evolved into a family startup weekend. Now, certainly there's been an event planned, it's been postponed, and you'll talk about that here, but explain kind of the idea behind the family startup weekend.
With the family startup weekend, what the whole idea behind it, and this would be the first of its kind in the country when it happens, but the whole idea behind it is instead of an individual coming during open mic night and pitching an idea, you come in pairs, and we use the word family real loosely. I mean, it can be your traditional family members, father son, father daughter, mother son, mother daughter, uncle niece, uncle nephew, go through the whole list. But also, when you look at family, we also said you can be friends too. I mean, friends can be your family.
That's right.
They're just the family that you pick, and so
not like who you work with, right, Nathan?
Right. So the whole idea is to come in pairs and pitch your idea, pitch your business idea as a pair for the family night. It's a way to engage the younger generation, the high schoolers, and get them involved and get them thinking creatively as well.
What's important about these events, and I want to make this point before we go to the break, is that, as Nathan explained earlier, our organization, the cities, local government, what have you, in this type of approach, really take a back seat. We are not entrepreneurs. I think I'm speaking for both Nathan and I. We are not entrepreneurs, nor are we in a position to lead them or tell them how they should start their business or the process they should find inspiration and take that next step to take that inspiration from an idea to a concrete business. And I think once we embrace that as an organization, and Nathan was a big part of that, then we really realized that the best way we can encourage that type of development is to help support those events, help support any way we can to bring that group together. Again, whether it's through Startup Weekend, whether it is through Family Startup Weekend. The University of Mary is hosting, I think, the next TEDx event here, April 6th, I believe. Mm-hmm. And really, anything we can do to encourage those events and help spur that type of organic growth and encourage that type of spontaneity, that's the way we're going to be best serving our community. So we're going to be played out here with the little boy George, of all people, for our St. Patrick's Day theme musical Entourage.
Is he even Irish?
I think he is.
Is he?
We'll be back here at the break. Super Talk 1270.
Right now, 25.
News and Views with Joel Heitkamp. Weekdays on Super Talk 1270.
Back here for the St. Patrick's Day edition of the Dakota Housing Network on Super Talk 1270. Jim is playing us in and out of breaks with the selection of Ireland's finest pop music, including the Cranberries. I hope our one loyal listener, Emily, out there is enjoying the musical selection because it is dedicated to her. It's called Dreams. Before the break, Nathan and I were talking about entrepreneurial development in Bismarck-Mandan and how that type of organic growth happens and how we as an organization try to encourage that. But growing jobs through entrepreneurship is really just one way, as Nathan mentioned before the break, of the three that we primarily look at. The other two being business retention and expansion and business attraction. Again, all of which falls under Nathan's role as our Director of Business Development at the BMDA. And business retention and expansion, I think, is something, Nathan, you and I probably would agree, doesn't get a lot of attention, because what people want to talk about when they find out where you work or where I work is they always want to talk about what?
Retail.
What's coming?
Retail.
Why don't we have this? I was in Fargo last week, and they have 2 of these. Why don't we even have one of them? That's what they want to talk about. But really, we as an organization, the way we look at it is that it makes no sense for us to try to put all of our time and eggs into one basket and one business that might create 200 jobs if we bring them in. But in doing so, we neglected our existing companies, and they shed 300 jobs. It just doesn't make sense for us. And that's why, since 2004, our organization has facilitated a formal business retention and expansion program. And Nathan, again, is our point person for these activities. And Nathan, why don't you tell our listeners about really what is BRE for us? What is BRE for us?
So our business retention expansion programs, formalized programs, are really nothing unique, especially to Bismarck Mandan. They're utilized all over the country by economic development organizations, to, just like you said, basically find out what are the individual business needs, and then what is the overall health of the business community. I think those are our 2 main goals of the BRE program. We use the acronym BRE just because it's easier to say than business retention expansion. But our goals for the program, like I said, are really to address and identify the individual business needs, and then engage the overall health of the business community. This happens through an interview process that we use. We have a web-based software, and like you said, I mean, this is when we get asked about our job, this is not the exciting part that we get to talk about.
No, it is not.
But I think we both agree that it's definitely probably one of the more important parts of our job when we're looking at what we do. Definitely, making sure that our businesses, our investors are happy. When we looked at the program here in the last couple of years, I think the goal of identifying and addressing individual business needs, I think we were doing a really good job at, and then we probably needed some help, maybe not necessarily with gauging the overall business community health, but at least verifying what we were hearing, and backing it up with some cold hard data statistics. And so that's where we've kind of revamped it a little bit, but it's still the interview process that we've done for many years, and now I think it's a little bit more standardized, and so that we can find those data points, those statistics that can back up what we are actually seeing is the overall health of the business community. And
Nathan is so right in that business retention expansion it's always critical. It's always going to be one of our organization's core functions, one of our core tenets, but it becomes more important in times like these, when you have a changing economy, when you have outside forces impacting our economy and impacting our community. We have to be proactive about asking what are those issues, and we have to be proactive, as Nathan just explained very well, about quantifying those things so that we can go to them policymakers. We can go to leaders and say, this is an issue that we know quantifiably is impacting the health of our business community and our individual businesses, and we have to address it. And I think, as Nathan, again, just pointed out, we're working harder in that respect. We're working harder to quantify it so that we can make those changes and make them happen more easily than we have in the past. But that's not to say that business attraction is also not important. We've talked about how do we grow our own businesses, organically through entrepreneurial development. We've talked about how do we hold on to the ones that we already have that are already making investments in the community through the BRE program that Nathan facilitates for us. But within the last few years, Nathan, you and I have talked about this, we have obviously experienced really what is unprecedented growth for Bismarck and Mandan. We had unemployment rates that most likely again this summer will still go down to flat 2%, maybe a little bit lower. We've had thousands of open jobs, and all of a sudden you see help wanted signs posted all over town. At that point, there's not a whole lot of appetite for bringing in new jobs. There's not a whole lot of appetite for essentially making the situation more difficult than it already is. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think, when we've gone out and talked about business attraction, we always get the well, why would we do that? We have all these help wanted signs up. We have all this need for workforce. Why would we want to attract new business? But I think, when we looked at it, the days of a shotgun approach where we're going out and trying to recruit every business on the street is over. I think there needs to be a targeted, focused effort, and I think we're going to talk about that here.
Absolutely, and Nathan's right in that because the community didn't necessarily have the appetite. We as an organization put our efforts elsewhere, whether it was entrepreneurship, whether it was business retention, or even in the areas of workforce development and talent attraction. We focus a lot of our resources in those areas, and business attraction became much more reactive than it should have been. Now, as Nathan just mentioned, our board of directors has given us the freedom and the ability and the direction to seek some outside help to engage in a process that Nathan, I think, will explain here and what it means for the organization going forward.
So one of the things that we've learned through other communities doing this is that, like I talked about before, the efforts for business attraction need to be focused and targeted. And so we're seeking some outside help to do what's called a target industry analysis. So basically what this person will do is come in, take a look at our community, and do what I call a overall analysis, take a look at the forest from the forest from outside the trees. We look at it from the forest in the trees, and it's hard to see what our competitive advantages are when we see them every day. Our school systems are some of the best in the country. Just ask the east side of North Dakota about water needs. I think
very true.
We don't have those here, and so it's just something that we take for granted, and so we're looking at this company to come in, provide us some outside help, show us where the competitive advantages are, and then point us to those industries that those will be real exciting for them when they're looking at expanding, and sites that they're looking at to expand into.
And you heard Nathan reference, we call it sometimes smokestack chasing. It's also called just a shotgun approach. And certainly other communities do that. But what we've determined as an organization is that in order for us to generate the greatest chance for success, in order to make these efforts in business attraction as successful as they can be, we have to focus and we have to narrow down that scope to those individual areas, as Nathan explained, where we have inherent advantages. And the reason that we're utilizing some outside help is, I'll borrow a phrase all the time that Nathan uses, and that really is the ability to see the forest for the trees. It is, think about water. Again, we who live in here, Bismarck, Mandan, and like me, we're from here, we take the river for granted. We take the Missouri River for granted because it's always been there. Well, guess what? There are other communities within our own state who don't have that solid, stable, reliable source of water. And when you think about what every business, what every home, what every community needs, it's water. So is there a way we can market that? Is that one of those assets? We simply have to do a better job as a community of narrowing down our efforts, focusing our efforts, and this analysis, this activity will help us do that. Now, Nathan, when we talk about business attraction, certainly we want to be proactive about it and do a better job of that way. But we also have companies and real estate brokers and corporate site selection consultants who still call us on a regular basis, and there's still interest out there, is there not?
Oh, I think, and I think we'd probably both agree the interest has probably picked up, especially even in the last week or two. It seems
Nathan's
like
running in our office, folks. You can't see him, but he's running.
It seems like it's picked up even more. I mean, we've gotten a number of calls for some pretty large sites of, people looking for sites for their businesses. Are we going to get all of them? Probably not. Obviously not. But hopefully, if we can land a few of them, I think it'd be a great thing for our community. And
to Nathan's point, one of the first entry points for our organization and for businesses looking for information about the community is our organization's website. The BMDA website, which you can find, I would encourage you to look at sometime, is simply www.bmda.org. BMDA.org is, in my mind, the greatest single source of business and demographic information for all of Bismarck, Mandan, Burley, Morton County. It's administered by our Director of Marketing Research, Judy Souter. Does a tremendous job of keeping that up to date, does a tremendous job of keeping the information there relevant to our community. And again, that's oftentimes the first contact point, because Nathan and I have both learned that a lot of times when new companies are looking at our market, they're looking at it and they're going to the website and they're gathering information, and they might even get so far in the process to rule us out before we've even had a chance to respond, because that's just the world we live in. But that's critically important. It's a great resource for not only those companies looking at our community, but those residents here in Bismarck-Mandan as well. Before the break, I just want to make the point that all the activities we've talked about so far, entrepreneurial development, business retention and expansion, and business attraction, all of which Nathan is our lead point person, we're doing that so we ensure that the Bismarck-Mandan economy continues to grow. We are not going to leave it up to chance. We are not just going to idly sit by and say or assume that we're going to keep growing just because we're the two best-looking economic developers in the region. We're not going to assume that just because we have water, we can make that happen. We're going to be proactive about it to make sure that we keep growing. So when we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about the outlook for 2016 here in Bismarck-Mandan. But with that, we're going to leave you here with another Cranberries track on Super Talk 1270.
Right now, it's 25.
On Twitter, Facebook, online, and YouTube. supertalk1270.com.
And we're back here on the St. Patrick's Day edition of the Dakota Housing Network with what I'm told by producer Jim, this is an obscure Van Morrison track called What Makes the Irish Heartbeat. We'll give you a few seconds just so you can Spotify it if you want.
Sounds like a punchline.
For our last segment today, I'm joined, as I have been the entire show, by the BMDA's Director of Business Development, Mr. Nathan Schneider. And Nathan has really spent the last 15 minutes talking about our activities in overall business development, whether it's entrepreneurship, business retention, expansion, business attraction. But as we talked about in one of the previous segments, when people find out, I think, what we do for a living, Nathan, as you said, first thing they want to know, are we getting Chili's?
Mine, it has a Sonic. How come we don't have a Sonic?
How come there's a Culver's in Brainerd, Minnesota, but we don't have a Culver's here in Bismarck? We're 10 times their size. We're not really 10 times their size, folks, but we're bigger. Those are the types of questions that we most often get once people figure out what we do for a living. And I will tell you, and Nathan will go through some of these here in a little bit, but 2016 is going to be a very big year in terms of construction, in terms of overall activity. I think it's tough for some people to believe because I think, as Nathan said at the outside of the show, oil starts with a 3 right now and not a 4 or a 5 or a 7 or 8, something like that. Ag commodities have had a couple of down years, and so there's a lot of just doom and gloom, for lack of a better term, right now in our community. But, folks, I'm going to tell you, I don't understand where it's coming from because we have a tremendous amount of activity coming up. We've got a lot of quality of life projects coming up, right, Nathan? And we've got some great things that will help people stay here in the community.
I think, when you look at it, I think people, saw the numbers in 2014 and in early 2015 and got all excited. I think, that wasn't a normal year. That wasn't a normal 18-month stretch of growth. So I think this is just back to normal. And anytime you start decreasing in growth, you see those numbers going down, people start to get a little nervous.
Well, I think we sometimes use the interstate analogy in our office. And I think, at least for me, because I'm simple, it helps me understand it. And the way we explain it is when you're driving along Interstate 94 somewhere, going where you're going, you're generally doing 75, 80 miles an hour, somewhere around there. And then when you pull off the exit, you slow down and you're only doing 55 or 50 or 60, something like that. So you're still going faster than you normally would, but because you're not going as fast as you were just now, it feels like you're slowing down to a standstill. And in my mind, I think a lot of people's minds, that's what we're going through here in Bismarck-Mandan. Nathan made a great point earlier in that stretch from 2013 to 2014 or 2012, 2013, that wasn't sustainable, nor do I believe it was really healthy in the long run for Bismarck-Mandan's economy. I mean, housing prices were going to be at an unsustainable pace. We were having trouble attracting people in because of the cost of living. And so this new pace, this new normal, if you will, in Bismarck-Mandan, I think is healthy for our economy. It's healthy for our long-term growth. And because we have the diversity that we do, we are going to be able to settle into a very nice growth pattern here going forward. The quality of life projects that we'll talk about here in a little bit are important because I think Nathan and I would both agree that one of the issues that we still have, the biggest issue, is going to be people. It's going to be finding people to work in these stores. Would you agree, Nathan?
Yeah, that's when you look at some of the things that's popped up here in the last year to 18 months with Hay Creek Shops up on the north side and all those stores that have opened up there and some of the restaurants with Longhorn and Panera Bread and Caribou Coffee and all of those. Those aren't probably jobs that you can afford $2,100 a month rents or a mortgage for a $250,000 house. And so, getting those prices down is going to be key to attracting workers in there, and getting quality of life projects like we have upcoming with the YMCA here in Mandan and the activity center up on the north side of Mandan that the voters passed the sales tax for. You look at the Missouri River Day Park down on the south end of town, and I'm obviously not a runner, but there are people that hopefully will see those projects as a real bonus to the community and help draw more people in.
The reason that we bring up those quality of life projects and the retail projects that Nathan just did is because as Bismarck-Mandan competes, we're not only competing for businesses, we are competing for people. And when you have 2,300 open jobs, I expect that to climb this summer. Well, then, yeah, we can try to fill as many as we can with people who are already here in Bismarck and Mandan. I don't think this is a great stat, but we do lead the nation in the number of people working 2 jobs. So we can do everything we can possibly with the population we have, but we need people to stay here once they graduate, for whether it's high school or college. We need people from elsewhere to move in. And as silly as it sounds, I think sometimes, what do you look for in a community if you're looking to go somewhere else? You look to see what kind of amenities they have. And so a Schaumburg expansion, adding new ice. Nathan mentioned the Family Wellness Center here in South Mandan with daycare and essentially new YMCA and the Mandan Sports Complex. That gives people reason to stay. What else? Retail. People base where they're going to travel for vacation based upon the same amenities. Retail is just something that someone who might be considering Bismarck-Mandan looks at and say, well, I'm used to this standard of living. I'm used to this level of amenities where I'm at right now. Why need that at the very least where I'm going to go? And so they're looking at, do we have this level of retail service? Do we have this level of restaurant service? And we're getting to that point, and we're going to add more. You heard Nathan mention earlier the Hay Creek shops. Nathan and I were just up on site yesterday. That construction is coming along very well, and according to the developers, those sales for those stores that have already opened, the Bed Bath & Beyond, Michael's, Ulta, Dick's, Gordman's, they exceeded their expectations. Kirkwood Mall is going through some dramatic changes. You've seen now, as Nathan mentioned earlier, the Panera Bread open up. You've seen the Caribou Coffee and Verizon's going on South 3rd Street. H&M is currently under construction inside the Kirkwood Mall. Nathan, Southeast Mandan obviously is experiencing some retail growth as well.
Yeah, you've seen Randy Roan's strip mall down here in Southeast Mandan open up, with Classic Rock Coffee. Classy Nails is the signs up over there we saw today. There's talk of some other national chain restaurants going in there, national coffee shop type stuff going in there. And so, you see growth down here. You see it up by the Walmart in Northwest Mandan. And so I think it's really all around.
And on top of that, not only do we have these type of service level jobs, but we have jobs creators. Jobs creating projects happening too. If you haven't driven up in northeast Bismarck lately past Basin Electric, you should, because Basin Electric is going to be adding about a 90,000 square foot expansion to their corporate headquarters. That's incredible. You drive by in northwest Bismarck on 43rd past Dakota Carrier Network. Dakota Carrier Network is kind of a stealthy technology company here in the community. They're doubling the size of their building. Here in Northwest Mandan, NISC up by Culverdale and up by Red Trail Elementary, they're going through about a $13.5 million expansion that is projected to add probably 75 new jobs through the course of the next 5 years. So it's not only those amenities that we talked about earlier, but certainly it's the jobs creators that will keep our economy healthy, keep our economy vibrant. And so, Nathan, we've got just a couple minutes here left before the show is over. But as you look out into 2016, what's your prediction? What's your outlook for this community and this community's economy?
I think the 2016 numbers are like you said before, are definitely going to stay on pace with 2015 numbers. I think when you talk to our contractors and our developers, I think they'd probably tell you the same. I think obviously the decisions for expansion were made for these projects 2 and 3 years ago. The real litmus test really is going to be 2017, 2018, and what happens in the decisions that are made. If oil stays in the $30-$40 range, what happens? If it goes to 120, what happens? If corn's back to $8 a bushel, if wheat's back to $7 a bushel, what happens then if those prices go back there, or if they stay here, what happens then? Because those decisions are being made now.
And Nathan points out what I think is probably the greatest. If there is a threat to our economy, if there is a cause for concern, I think that's it. Because as he just illustrated so well, the capital decisions that will result in new construction activity in 17 and 18 are being made now. And unfortunately, they're being made in an environment where there's a lot of doom and gloom. There's a lot of uncertainty in the economy. And on top of that, it's an election year. And we always see that happen in an election year anyways. And so my counsel to everyone listening is really a second of what Nathan just said. We still have a very strong economy. We have an economy that's really built for these types of situations because of its diversity. When you look at what are essentially the core four industries driving Bismarck Mandate's growth, you have government being the state capital. You have healthcare, obviously, with Mid-Dakota Clinic, CHI, and Sanford. We have energy generation with Basin and MDU. And you have education. Let's not forget, folks, Bismarck Public Schools is the biggest school district in the state. We have 3 colleges, even though we're not a college town, but BSC has 4,000 students. University of Mary is about 3,300. United Tribes somewhere around 3,400. So we have a very diverse economy that should one sector experience some slowdown, some recession, you have 3 others or 2 others that will pick that up. And so we're very optimistic, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop working. We are going to continue to work in the areas Nathan has talked about. We're going to continue to market the community. And if you're listening and you have a business idea, you have a business need, or you need some help, please, please, please get a hold of the office, the Bismarck Mandan Development Association. You can do that by visiting our website at www.bmda.org, or you can call the office at 222-5530. Ask for Nathan. He'll help you out. So with that, I want to thank Nathan for being my guest today. He didn't have much of his choice, but he came with a smile. Appreciate that. And we will see you next time here on the Dakota Housing Network on Super Talk 1270.